Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to StoryForge Academy, your home for mastering the craft of cinematic storytelling. Before we begin today's Session 7, Scene Writing and Dramatic Rhythm, let me tell you what's waiting for you in this class. Today, you'll learn how to control the heartbeat of your screenplay, how to make your story breathe through rhythm. You'll discover how fast-paced action scenes create tension and urgency, and how slow dramatic scenes invite emotion and reflection. We'll study how rhythm shapes the audience's heartbeat, how silence can speak louder than words, and how every scene, no matter how small, must change something. By the end of this session, you'll understand how to make your film move like music, when to strike hard, when to pause, and how to transition between action and emotion, so your story flows like a living symphony. So, grab your notebook, settle in, and get ready to see your scenes in a completely new way. If you enjoy learning the art and craft of screenwriting, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next session. Now, let's step into the world of rhythm, the secret pulse that turns story into cinema. Victor took a deep breath, his tone a mix of exhaustion and pride. Well, we work for someone who always has foresight and never acts without a plan. Salvador had prepared this team before we even arrived in Iran. I asked. Surprised? How so? He continued. Well, you know Salvador deals with major traders in Iran. Through one of those traders, who resides in Germany, Salvador managed to enlist this Iranian team. They were in the border town a day before our arrival, and most of them were stationed inside Pakistani territory. I asked, Victor, why didn't Salvador tell us anything? Victor shook his head. Because if we had known, we would have definitely exposed the team. We wouldn't have acted naturally, and the antiquity smugglers would have surely figured it out. When you entered Pakistani territory, they were like shadows, following you to figure out your destination. But along the way, the Iranian team, to avoid raising suspicion with the Pakistanis, had to maintain a distance, which led to the pursuit being unsuccessful. However, with the kidnapping of the expert woman by the smugglers, this time the Iranians managed to find their center, that caravanserai. Victor paused, his tone becoming more serious. But the situation was very delicate. There were 10 armed Pakistani men with Kalashnikovs, while the Iranians only had kameh with them. I asked, puzzled, what's a kameh? He explained, the short swords you saw in their hands. They are dangerous men, Reuben, but Salvador's strategy worked. I asked, I heard a gunshot just before you arrived. Victor said, I heard it too, but I don't know what it was for. I just prayed they hadn't shot you. Hearing that, my heart clenched. Victor, I was worried about the Indian woman and thought they had killed her. Victor said with certainty, when we parked the cars far away so they wouldn't notice us, we were observing the caravanserai's men closely. Suddenly, a motorcycle arrived and returned a few minutes later, but 7 other armed men left with it. It seemed they had encountered some problem, as if they needed backup. This was the perfect opportunity. With the reduction in armed personnel, we infiltrated through the unprotected areas and hid in the deserted rooms. After assessing the situation, the 3 armed men were quickly disarmed, and then we found 5 more in another room. We tied them all up, covered their mouths, and moved them to the cellar. I asked, Victor, no one was actually killed? He smiled. No, because the Iranians didn't see a need to kill anyone, as no actual conflict broke out. In case of a conflict, it's natural for both sides to suffer casualties. But with those armed men gone, there was no need for a direct confrontation. Then Victor laughed, a laugh that held both fatigue and triumph. The interesting part of the story is that when Roland saw the pictures of all those antiquities, and estimated their value at 20 million euros. He demanded a 10 million euro share, or half of the antiquities, from Salvador. But Salvador firmly rejected Roland's demand. He winked and continued, "And now I have good news for you. Remember when we went to rent that apartment? The one that was for sale, but we went to rent it, each unit costing 1.5 million euros. My eyes widened in surprise. "Yes, why?" He said with a triumphant smile. "Salvador bought 2 units for us. In essence, this is our share from this trip and those antiquities." I was in shock from this sweet news when suddenly Anna made a video call. She was in the new apartment and was badgering me about we have to throw away all the old furniture. What should we buy? What's suitable for where? Life, with all its madness and horror, was strangely continuing, and hope, however small, had once again taken root in my heart. From the depths of nightmare to a smile of life. The end of the Pakistan chapter. Reuben's narrative to Maria. Reuben took a deep breath, looking distantly at Maria. Those days, I was hospitalized in Tehran's largest hospital, right next to Milad Tower. From my room window, I'd stare at that towering structure and tell myself, before this trip I saw myself like this tower, soaring high, full of pride. But now I'm so utterly ruined that I can't even talk to Anna. My body and soul were still wounded, and the only thing that kept a flicker of hope alive in my heart was the Indian woman being alive. This gave me hope that maybe I could return to life, that maybe not everything was over. I was lost in thought when my room door opened and Victor walked in. Seeing him, a glimmer of excitement surged through me. Without hesitation, I asked, "Victor, what happened? How did this miracle come about?" Victor took a deep breath, his tone a mix of exhaustion and pride. "Well, we work for someone who always has foresight and never acts without a plan. Salvador had prepared this team before we even arrived in Iran." I asked. Surprised, "How so?" He continued, "Well, you know Salvador deals with major traders in Iran. Through one of those traders, who resides in Germany, Salvador managed to enlist this Iranian team. They were in the border town a day before our arrival, and most of them were stationed inside Pakistani territory." I asked, "Victor, why didn't Salvador tell us anything?" Victor shook his head. "Because if we had known, we would have definitely exposed the team. We wouldn't have acted naturally, and the antiquity smugglers would have surely figured it out. When you entered Pakistani territory, they were like shadows, following you to figure out your destination. But along the way, the Iranian team, to avoid raising suspicion with the Pakistanis, had to maintain a distance, which led to the pursuit being unsuccessful. However, with the kidnapping of the expert woman by the smugglers, this time the Iranians managed to find their center, that caravanserai." Victor paused, his tone growing more serious. But the situation was very delicate. There were 10 armed Pakistani men with Kalashnikovs, while the Iranians only had kameh with them. I asked, puzzled, "What's a kameh?" He explained, "The short swords you saw in their hands. They are dangerous men, Reuben, but Salvador's strategy worked." I asked, "I heard a gunshot just before you arrived." Victor said, "I heard it too, but I don't know what it was for. I just prayed they hadn't shot you." Hearing that, my heart clenched. "Victor, I was worried about the Indian woman and thought they had killed her." Victor said with certainty, "When we parked the cars far away so they wouldn't notice us, we were observing the caravanserai's men closely. Suddenly, a motorcycle arrived and returned a few minutes later, but 7 other armed men left with it. It seemed they had encountered some problem, as if they needed backup. This was the perfect opportunity. With the reduction in armed personnel, we infiltrated through the unprotected areas and hid in the deserted rooms. After assessing the situation, the 3 armed men were quickly disarmed, And then we found 5 more in another room. We tied them all up, covered their mouths, and moved them to the cellar. I asked, "Victor, was no one actually killed?" He smiled. "No, because the Iranians didn't see a need to kill anyone, as no actual conflict broke out. In case of a conflict, it's natural for both sides to suffer casualties. But with those armed men gone, there was no need for a direct confrontation." Then Victor laughed, a laugh that held both fatigue and triumph. The interesting part of the story is that when Roland saw the pictures of all those antiquities and estimated their value at 20 million euros, he demanded a 10 million euro share, or half of the antiquities, from Salvador. But Salvador firmly rejected Roland's demand. He winked and continued, "And now I have good news for you. Remember when we went to rent that apartment? The one that was for sale, but we went to rent it, each unit costing 1.5 million euros. My eyes widened in surprise. "Yes, why?" he said with a triumphant smile. "Salvador bought 2 units for us. In essence, this is our share from this trip and those antiquities." I was in shock from this sweet news when suddenly, 10 days after the rescue, while I was physically recovering except for my broken leg and a tired spirit, I received a video call, an unknown number with an Indian country code. I was puzzled who it could be. I answered, and the face of the same young, beautiful Indian woman appeared. She eagerly asked about my well-being. Immediately, without hesitation, amidst my excitement, I said, "1 question." She smiled and said, "Ask." I said, Suddenly the door opened. "You came in, looked, and then left. Why?" She replied, her voice still trembling with excitement and concern. "I came to let you know your friends had arrived and salvation was near. Because I noticed their secret entry into the caravanserai, and I asked the Pakistani who was with me to see you and somehow deliver this news. But when I saw you in that condition, my heart broke so much that I couldn't speak, and I was afraid the Pakistani would notice. So I waited for the rescue operation to begin." Anxiously, I asked, "What was that gunshot?" She laughed, a laugh that lifted a heavy burden from my heart. "A venomous snake was seen, and one of the Pakistanis shot it." I breathed a sigh of relief. I hadn't realized I was holding. I asked, "Where are you now?" She said, "I arrived in India yesterday. Until yesterday, we were busy exhuming my friend's body from that caravanserai, and all those Pakistanis who were in the cellar were arrested." I hesitantly asked, "The cannibals?" She confirmed. "They were also arrested and charged, but the police explained that they'd probably only be sentenced to 10 to 12 years in prison." This news, though the sentence was less than I expected, still brought a profound calm to my soul. Their nightmares no longer haunted me. I asked about her well-being and her financial situation. She said she was fine, but had to go back to work, though it was still mentally difficult for her. I thought for a moment. "Would you accept a gift from me?" She asked, "What?" I said, "A year's leave and rest." She looked at me, astonished. I continued with conviction. "I'll pay a year's salary, on the condition that you only rest and recover." She smiled, a smile that seemed to open a window to light, piercing all the darkness within me. That smile was the key to my return to life. I asked, "How did you get my number?" She replied mischievously, "I got it from Victor before I left, because you were incredibly important to me." 3 days later, I was in Germany, and Anna was in shock. When she heard these stories, all she could do was take a deep breath. The Pakistan chapter of my life had come to an end, with deep wounds, but with a spirit in which a flicker of hope had rekindled. I was ready for a new chapter, a chapter in the midst of normal life, though I knew secrets and dangers would always lurk. The start of the Turkish adventure, Shadows and Castle Whispers. 3 days later, I was in Germany, and Anna was in shock. When she heard these stories, All she could do was take a deep breath. The Pakistan chapter of my life had come to an end, with deep wounds, but with a spirit in which a flicker of hope had rekindled. I was ready for a new chapter, a chapter in the midst of normal life, though I knew secrets and dangers would always lurk. The start of the Turkish adventure, shadows and castle whispers. The appointed night arrived. Reuben and Maria left the old man's house precisely at midnight. They passed through the narrow, dark alleyways, where the scent of damp earth and wild herbs filled the air, until they reached the edge of the village. A side road leading to the village ran alongside its old, semi-abandoned section. Reuben felt a strange, unsettling sensation in that place. It was as if his entire being was preparing for a confrontation with Al, the demonic woman, the supernatural entity, rumored to inhabit the desolate castle and guard his treasure. They had reached the location and were now waiting for Roland's group. A few minutes later, Maria whispered softly to Reuben, "They're here." Reuben looked down the road that, in the night's darkness, seemed to lead straight to hell. A van, its lights off, was approaching slowly and silently. Moments later, the van stopped, and the group disembarked. Roland, with his tall stature, stepped out first, followed by the rest of the team in sequence. But the last person to emerge seemed to breathe new life into Reuben, the one he hadn't. Expected Victor was there. Victor's presence was an immense source of strength for Reuben, a balm for his unseen emotional wounds. They embraced each other without hesitation. Advanced Screenwriting Class, Analyzing the Climax, Resolution, and Crossover of the Pakistan Flashback. Good morning, everyone. In this final segment of the Pakistan narrative and the critical transition into the Turkey plot, we examine how a screenplay achieves satisfying closure on a traumatic past while setting the stage for the new climax. This section focuses on resolving the lingering questions, establishing a new status quo, and delivering the final emotional beat that justifies Reuben's continued involvement in dangerous work. The resolution of the Pakistan nightmare. This section systematically answers the unresolved questions from the previous segment, providing psychological closure for Reuben and structural closure for the audience. A. The truth of the gunshot, subverting expectations. Reuben is haunted by the gunshot, believing it signals the death of the Indian woman and the definitive victory of despair. The anxiously awaited answer. The Indian woman's revelation that the gunshot was merely for a venomous snake is a brilliant, though perhaps slightly anticlimactic, twist. It subverts the audience's expectation of human tragedy with a mundane, for that, environment detail. Thematic function. This subversion is essential for Reuben's recovery. It definitively proves that his extreme fear and guilt were not rooted in reality. It allows him to shed the burden of causing her death, creating the psychological space needed for him to re-engage with life. The weight lifted from his heart symbolizes the lifting of his self-imposed death sentence. B. The legal and moral closure. The cannibal's fate. Reuben needs to know that the pure evil he faced has been contained, even if not fully punished. Justice served, relatively. The news that the cannibal brothers were arrested and charged, alongside the exhumation of the friend's body, provides the external resolution. The lingering stain, the light sentence, 10 to 12 years in prison, maintains the theme of corruption and moral ambiguity introduced earlier. Justice is imperfect, but the immediate threat is gone. The fact that their nightmares no longer haunted me shows the immediate therapeutic effect of this news. C. The act of redemption, the gift. Reuben's final interaction with the Indian woman is his moment of personal redemption, the atonement. By offering her a year's salary for rest and recovery, Reuben atones for his initial, fatal lie. I forced her to endure 2 more humiliating days. This is a final, selfless act that contrasts sharply with the calculated greed of Roland and the Khan. The key to life. Her smile, which seemed to open a window to light, and was the key to my return to life, signifies that Reuben has found a purpose beyond mere survival. By saving her sanity and future, he saves his own. 2. The material reward and the new status quo. The narrative must address the financial outcome of the mission, which was the original motivation for the entire ordeal. A. Salvador's strategy vindicated. Victor's explanation confirms Salvador as the master strategist, whose secrecy, not telling the team about the Iranians, was the key to success. The infiltration. The details of the rescue, the motorcycle distraction that reduced the Pakistani personnel, the infiltration with only the Iranian short swords, Kameh, and the successful capture without killing anyone, show the precision and professionalism of Salvador's planning. The financial power play, Roland's greedy demand for a 10 million euro share in Salvador's firm rejection highlights the power imbalance between the ruthless financier and the more pragmatic operation manager. Salvador is now the clear winner. B. The ultimate compensation, the new apartment. The final tangible reward is the most significant since the diamond. The sweet news, the purchase of 2 high-value apartment units for Reuben and Victor serves as the ultimate payoff. This is Reuben's share of the spoils and a reward for his suffering. Closure and continuity. The video call from Anna in the new, expensive apartment seals the deal. The diamond was the catalyst for the terror. The apartment is the reward for the survival. Life continues its chaotic, consumerist trajectory, but now with a foundation of hope, allowing Reuben to close the Pakistan chapter. 3. The crossover. From flashback to present action. The narrative shifts abruptly from the resolution of the past to the imminent crisis of the present day, using the transition to heighten the stakes. A. Thematic resonance of the village. Reuben and Maria's midnight walk establishes the immediate contrast between the past and present threats. Sensory re-entry, the scent of damp earth and wild herbs, replaces the metallic tang of blood and the smell of dust from the caravanserai. Anticipation of the supernatural. Reuben's strange, unsettling sensation confirms his readiness for the confrontation with A.L., the demonic woman. The psychological wounds of Pakistan have hardened him for this new, metaphysical battle. B. The unexpected reunion. The arrival of Roland's team is deliberate, but the final member provides the necessary emotional lift. The balm for the wounds. The unexpected presence of Victor is a powerful moment of character catharsis. Victor is the symbol of the successful partnership and the shared ordeal. His presence is described as an immense source of strength and a balm for his unseen emotional wounds. This ensures that Reuben is not facing the supernatural threat alone, but with the support of a trusted comrade who understands the true cost of their work. The story has now successfully closed the loop on the past, established Reuben's emotional and financial status quo, and placed him, supported by his friends, directly on the path to confrontation with the ancient, terrifying entity, the owl woman at the castle. The Screenwriting Class, Session 7, Scene Work and Dramatic Rhythm. Welcome back. Today we shift our focus from the microscopic element of dialogue to the macroscopic structure of the script, the scene. A screenplay is a collection of scenes, and the way you construct them dictates the dramatic rhythm of your entire film. We will use the final section of the Pakistan chapter and the start of the Turkish adventure, Part 2, 7 of the narrative, to analyze how scenes function to advance the story and control its pacing. Part 1, how scenes advance the story. A scene is a unit of action taking place in a single location and time. Every successful scene must have a clear dramatic purpose. It must change the situation, reveal new information, or alter a character's motivation. The final pages of the Pakistan chapter, focusing on the hospital and the conversation with Victor, and later with the Indian woman, served two crucial functions: resolution and reward. 1. The resolution scene, tying up loose ends. The scene with Victor in the hospital provides the necessary exposition to explain the miracle of the rescue, moving the story from the dramatic climax, the burial, Chan rescue, to the resolution, the explanation, reward. Dramatic purpose: to transition the plot from chaos to control, and to establish the power foresight of Salvador. Plot advancement: we learn about Salvador's secret Iranian team, their strategy, the Kameh, short swords, the reduction of Pakistani forces, and the non-lethal infiltration. This fills the plot holes created by the previous intense action. Character revelation: Victor's dialogue, though explanatory, is framed with exhaustion and pride, revealing his self-satisfaction with his role in a successful plan, and his almost blind faith in Salvador's genius. Never acts without a plan. In the reward and confirmation scene, establishing the stakes of success. The revelation of the two bought apartments is a classic screenwriting technique for establishing the material reward of the protagonists' survival and risk. Dramatic purpose: to demonstrate the high stakes and wealth involved in their illegal work, and to provide a tangible reason for Ruben to continue. The dialogue concerning Roland's demand and Salvador's firm rejection is vital. It shows Salvador's power and integrity within his world, elevating him from a mere dealer to a formidable, respected figure. The apartments are a concrete, visual representation of their success. This is instantly followed by the Anna video call, which anchors the reward to Ruben's personal life and motivation, the why he does all this. The scene ends on a note of hope and normalization. Life was strangely continuing. Check the emotional closure scene, the true salvation. The video call with the Indian woman is the scene that provides emotional closure for Ruben. Without this scene, his character arc remains incomplete, burdened by guilt. Dramatic purpose: to relieve Ruben's moral guilt and provide the true psychological turning point. The unspoken conflict resolved. Ruben's first question: suddenly the door opened. You came in, looked, and then left. Why? Is his desperate need for confirmation that she didn't curse him. Her answer, she came to give him hope, provides his redemption. The gunshot mystery, the simple, almost anticlimactic reveal, a venomous snake was seen, is brilliant. It subverts the audience's and Ruben's worst fears, allowing him a sigh of relief that signifies the end of his nightmare world. The gift. Ruben's offer of a year's salary is his final act of atonement. Her smile is framed as the key to my return to life, making this scene the true emotional climax of the chapter. Despite the earlier physical action. Part 2. Dramatic rhythm, fast versus slow. Dramatic rhythm is the pace at which scenes unfold, created by the length of the scenes, the amount of conflict, and the density of the information. The narrative effectively shifts rhythm to control the audience's experience. Turn fast rhythm, action tension. A fast rhythm is characterized by short, action-packed scenes, minimal reflection, and dialogue that is essential and clipped, as seen in the rescue sequence itself, covered in the previous session. The focus is on the immediate action. Example from the text, implied. The actual infiltration and neutralization of the Pakistanis. The 3 armed men were quickly disarmed. And then we found 5 more. Must have been a sequence of short, sharp and silent scenes. Victor's quick explanation reports on that fast-paced action. 2. Slow rhythm, reflection drama. A slow rhythm allows the audience and characters time to process events. Scenes are often longer, focused on dialogue or internal monologue, and the emphasis is on emotional fallout and character change. Example from the text. The hospital scenes are intentionally slow, setting the tone. Reuben's contemplation while looking at Milad. Tower establishes the mood of ruin and reflection. This internal scene sets a slow, melancholic rhythm. The dialogue pacing. The long dialogue with Victor, where they go over details like Salvador's plan, the Khameh and the apartment, demands the audience pause and process the facts. The dialogue is dense with exposition, slowing the pace down to ensure the logic of the rescue is accepted. The Indian woman call. This is an entirely emotional scene with virtually no action. The rhythm slows to a near stop, allowing the audience to fully absorb Reuben's relief, her forgiveness, and the final lifting of the threat, the snake gunshot. 3. Transitioning rhythm. The setup for the next act. The beginning of the Turkish. Adventure, Part 7, marks a deliberate and immediate shift back to a moderate building rhythm. The scene, the start of the Turkish. Adventure, shadows and castle whispers. Establishment. The setting is immediately established as mysterious and tense. Narrow, dark alleyways. Scent of damp earth. Strange, unsettling sensation. Building tension. The visual of the van approaching slowly and silently creates anticipation. The rhythm is not chaotic action, but a measured build-up to the new mission. The catalyst. The unexpected arrival of Victor serves as the emotional trigger for Reuben. Immense source of strength, balm for his unseen. Emotional wounds. This moment of embrace is the key beat change that confirms their partnership is renewed, and the new adventure can begin. The scene ends not on a conflict, but on a moment of solidarity, preparing the audience for the coming challenge against AL. Final thoughts. A great screenwriter knows that a film cannot sustain a single rhythm. You must alternate between the fast pace of action and the slow pace of consequence and reflection. The Pakistan chapter ends by slowing down to secure emotional and logical closure, ensuring the audience is ready to follow Reuben and Victor into the new, unknown territory of Turkey. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to StoryForge Academy and to Session 7, Scene Writing and Dramatic Rhythm. This is one of the most practical and eye-opening classes in our entire screenwriting course, because today we explore the heartbeat of cinema, the rhythm that makes a scene feel alive, tense, or tender. A film is not built from dialogue, nor even from plot. It is built from scenes, each one a living organism with its own pulse, temperature, and direction. When you master scene rhythm, you master how emotion moves through time. The scene as a unit of storytelling. Every screenplay is a chain of scenes. Each scene must change something. Otherwise, it's not a scene. It's decoration. A scene begins with a situation and ends with a change. That change can be emotional, informational, or relational, but something must shift. Ask yourself 3 golden questions for every scene you write. 1. What does the character want in this scene? 2. What stands in their way? 3. How is the balance of power different at the end? If nothing has changed, if everyone leaves the room the same way they entered, cut the scene. Cinema rewards transformation, not repetition. 2. Rhythm, the invisible music of drama. Rhythm in screenwriting refers to the tempo of your storytelling, how fast or slow the emotional current moves. It is not just about pacing, it's about emotional cadence. There are 2 broad rhythms to master. Fast rhythm, the rhythm of action, tension, pursuit. And slow rhythm, the rhythm of drama, reflection, emotional revelation. Both are essential. A film composed only of high-speed scenes becomes exhausting. A film of slow reflection becomes static. The art lies in alternating them like breath, Inhale and exhale, rise and fall. Let's study both in turn. Third, fast rhythm, the pulse of action. Fast rhythm is born from urgency. Every second counts. Characters move with purpose. Sentences are shorter. Edits are quicker. In writing terms, this means compression of dialogue. Cut everything that doesn't push the goal. Strong visual verbs. He runs. She slams. The glass shatters. Avoid description that slows the eye. Tight time frames. Real-time sequences or ticking clocks automatically raise pulse rate. Rapid shifts in focus. The camera, and your reader's mind, jumps between moments of danger, discovery or decision. A classic fast rhythm scene. A bomb under the table. Two people talking. We see the timer ticking. Every line of dialogue now carries two layers. What they say, and what we know they don't. The tension doesn't come from more words. It comes from tempo and awareness. The slow rhythm, the pulse of emotion. Slow rhythm, by contrast, is contemplative. It creates weight, intimacy, and reflection. The goal isn't speed, it's depth. Here, silence becomes your strongest tool. In a slow scene, dialogue breathes, pauses are meaningful. Visual composition matters. Lingering shots, close-ups, stillness. Subtext dominates. What's not said carries more power than what is spoken. The camera becomes patient. We are allowed to feel time passing. For example, a soldier returns home after war. The action is simple. He sits at the dinner table. The mother asks if he's hungry. He says, "Not yet." That "not yet" can hold a world of trauma. The rhythm of that pause, the silence before and after, is pure cinema. The science of contrast. The best films alternate between these two rhythms. It's the emotional equivalent of light and shadow. After an intense chase, we need a quiet aftermath. After a long emotional confession, we need movement, a door slam, a step into rain, something kinetic. This contrast is what gives energy to the screenplay. Without contrast, your film becomes monotone. The audience doesn't feel because there's no shift to measure feeling against. In musical terms, think of a symphony. Allegro followed by adagio. In film terms, Mad Max. Fury Road alternates pure chaos with seconds of quiet desperation. Marriage Story alternates long arguments with soft, wordless moments of pain. Both use rhythm as structure, not ornament. The scene as a mini-film. Every good scene follows a miniature version of the 3-act structure. 1. Setup. Establish where we are, who's present, and what they want. 2. Conflict. Introduce friction, resistance, or a new obstacle. Bar resolution. End with a twist, decision, or emotional change. The rhythm of these beats can vary. In an action scene, the setup might last 3 seconds. In a dramatic one, it could take 3 minutes. The proportion depends on tone, not rules. 7. Practical exercise. Let's get our hands dirty. Take this simple scene. Into cafe, day. Anna waits for Mark. The clock ticks. She checks her phone. Mark enters, wet from rain. Mark. Sorry, I'm late. Anna. You always are. Now, rewrite it twice. Once as a fast rhythm action scene, and once as a slow emotional scene. Version 1, fast rhythm, tension, action. The rain hits harder. Anna glances outside. A car screeches to a stop. Mark bursts in, soaked, breathless. Anna. Where is it? Mark. Shaking head. I lost it. They're coming. She freezes. Outside, headlights flash through the window. Every sentence is clipped. The emotional rhythm mirrors adrenaline. Version 2, slow rhythm, emotional drama. The rain whispers against the window. Anna stirs her coffee, watching it cool. Mark enters quietly. He doesn't meet her eyes. Mark. Sorry, I'm late. Anna. You always are. He sits. The silence stretches. Somewhere, a chair creaks. Here, stillness is the rhythm. What changes is not time, but meaning, fate. Reading rhythm like music. When revising your script, read each scene aloud. You'll hear the rhythm. If you can predict the next emotional beat, it's too smooth. If you feel breathless, it's too fast. Ask, do I need the audience to lean forward, fast, or lean inward, slow? That choice is your metronome. Fine. Final note, rhythm is character. Every character also carries a rhythm. A nervous man moves fast, talks fast, breathes fast. A confident woman controls tempo. She pauses where others rush. When rhythms collide, drama ignites. Think of the silence of the lambs, Clarice's quick, nervous speech versus Hannibal's calm, deliberate rhythm. That contrast alone generates unease. Closing thought. Scene rhythm is not decoration. It's the invisible current beneath your story. Fast rhythm propels, slow rhythm reveals. Balance them, and your screenplay will breathe. For your homework, rewrite a short dialogue from any film you love, once with tension and speed, once with stillness and emotional gravity. Observe how meaning transforms purely through tempo. Next session, we'll explore Session 8, Visual Transitions and Emotional Continuity. How to move between scenes so the film flows like thought. Cinema, after all, is not just storytelling. It's choreography of image, time, and emotion.